Hello, basketball fans. It's me, DC, for Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, and we're getting ready for week 20 of the NBA season. We're talking waiver wire. Hopefully, you already watched the video breaking down the schedule. Go right here. If you didn't, we're going to work off of that schedule a lot today because this is the playoffs. If you're still watching this video, you're either basketball obsessed like I am, which is great. Thanks for watching. Or you're definitely in the playoffs, which I also am. So let's get into it. The big question this week with the 5 games for Detroit, and we've already gotten questions. In fact, I want to shout them out. We got Amar, Moose, and Lannis all asked questions about Pistons, about Frank Jackson, whatever. So let's get into the nitty gritty with the Pistons. Let's bring up what's going on with the team. Bunch of injuries on there and the minutes rotation. Haven't brought these up in a little bit. Maybe they're reversed. The graphics aren't here yet. So they're on one side or the other. So let's go through the best options. I can't recommend Grant, right? He's rostered in 85% of leagues. That's not super helpful. If you can go grab Jerami Grant, sure, why not? Whatever. But if I'm going to prioritize for this, like Isaiah Stewart, cool. But again, over 50% rostered, he doesn't qualify for what we're talking about. You could take a look. Maybe he's available in your league. I would go first with Saddiq Bey, 37% rostered. He's probably my go-to ad if I'm limited here, right? I've only got so many spots and I'm just trying to capitalize on it. He's going to really get you threes and steals. There's nothing in particular, but there's some good all-around stats. Like you look at the last game against Charlotte, 5 threes, 22 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. You're not going to get that every game, right? Before that, he had 18, 8, and 3, 11, 8, 1, 1, 1. Like that's more what I would expect, somewhere between those two. And that's like 42% to 50% from the floor. That's awesome. You get solid percentages. You get about 3 3-pointers in there, and you're going to get to play them for potentially 5 games, depending on how you're streaming them in there. That's really helpful. That's the first ad I would do. Next up is Frank Jackson. He's playing well. 3% rostered, so widely available. You pick him up, you're going to get some threes and points, but little else, right? I'm not expecting him to go nuts, but with the 5 games, if you can get him in there and get threes and points, I'm not knocking it. I think it's a great move. Next up's Josh Jackson. He's giving you some all-around numbers, but it's not great in anything in particular, right? I like that he's piling up some stats, and the point is on a 5-game week, that can be really helpful. His biggest advantage is, well, the Pistons are doing weird rest, rotation, tanking, whatever we want to call the guys resting there. Like Killian Hayes is related to injury. That's different. Josh Jackson's not resting, right? He's like this young guy, but still counts as a veteran presence maybe on this team. Who knows? But he's playing every game, and that's the most valuable part about this. So you get some all-around numbers. You're going to get some bad field goal percentage. It's not terrible. He's hitting 5 out of 12 shots. So he's not going to sink you, but the 12 is a real field goal attempt. And across a week with 5 games, like if you get them all in there, it's going to be hit or miss. It's fine. It's going to be like 42, 43%. Like it's not going to kill you. But if it's that small forward, maybe you'd like a little bit better. But he's not going to rest any games. So I'm going Bey, then Frank Jackson, then Josh Jackson. That's how I'm going to list them off. I don't want a piece of Killian Hayes because I think he's going to rest 2 of the 5 games. If I'm wrong, okay, you're going to get assists, you're going to get steals. Like that's solid, but he's going to be, based on what we're seeing right now, some bad field goal percentage. Maybe you pick him up at the end of the week and play him on that back-to-back for the weekend just to try and attack something. But that's where I'm going with it. Sekou didn't make the list. Wayne Ellington didn't make the list. There's nothing standing out here. Well, Wayne, I don't even know he's playing. But you could watch them this week. Maybe you pick them up late for that back-to-back to end the week if it fits with someone really well. So I give that a look. That topic of if it fits with someone really well kind of takes me to the next point. Let's bring up the streaming grid here and show it. If you notice right at the top, Atlanta doesn't have another game after Thursday, and the Bucks don't have another game after Friday. If this is your championship week, and I know it's not for everyone, be ready to cut all your Bucks players and all your Atlanta players to pick people up and stream them in your daily change league. Does that make sense? Like Chris Middleton's great. Chris Middleton should not be cut for Josh Jackson. That would be crazy under normal circumstances. But if you're in the playoffs right now and it's your championship, go ahead. Cut Chris Middleton, grab Josh Jackson, and play him for those last 2 games. You're going to get 2 more games you weren't going to get otherwise, right? Clint Capella, sorry, you're out of here, and I'm going to try and grab someone and play him in those last games of the weekend. You got to take a look at that, right? I get that there are worse players, but if this is the end of your season, otherwise, don't make those moves, right? We've got 5-game weeks to consider for next week. Just to read it off in case you're like looking at your team and not looking at my pretty face. The 5-game weeks for next week are Indiana, Memphis, Milwaukee, and San Antonio, right? So I'm recommending like, oh yeah, just any Bucks that aren't on the can't cut list, go ahead and drop them if this is your championship. Don't make that move if you've got a game next week. You want them for the 5-game week. Don't go too nuts, right? But someone like Bobby Portis, who might be worth picking up this week, he's been helpful last week, like definitely cut bait there and get someone else in that lineup. Moving off of the Pistons and just overall teams to fade at the end of the week, we're going to get into it. They have to be rostered 50% or less, or I'm not going to talk about it, which means Kendrick Nunn couldn't make the list. I'm showing him rostered in 51% of leagues. Also, his schedule's not great this week. They only play 3 games. A couple of them are maybe streaming days, like the Dallas on Tuesday. Maybe if you have them, you can use them. But he's playing hot, so I wanted to mention it. I took a look, but his schedule doesn't mesh well for daily change. It's only 3 games for weekly lock leagues, so I'm not going to recommend Kendrick Nunn. I know there were questions about it last week, and because he's playing hot, I looked into it. It doesn't really fit. Another guy that doesn't quite make the cut, Bobby Portis, I already mentioned him. He's rostered at 52%, so he's too high. He's had a good couple of games, right? So I mentioned him last week as a maybe if Giannis is going to be out, and that very thing happened. If we take a look at the minutes right here, Giannis played 1 minute on the 29th. He left, and then he missed the next game. And Portis had good games. 10-11 with 4 steals, 16-14 with 2 steals and a block. He shot 50% from the floor and 70%. Like, that's awesome for a pickup. It's not awesome for lock him in all week. Giannis is probably going to be coming back now, depending on when you watch this. Maybe he already did. So I'm not sure he's going to be usable all week. And the Bucks' schedule is like okay for this week. You get the game against Brooklyn. You would like that. In fact, they get to play Brooklyn twice. They play now on Sunday after I record this. And then they play him again on Tuesday. It doesn't fit perfectly, but just watch if Giannis is going to be in or out. If we take a look at these box scores, he had good games against Philly. My apologies to longtime subscriber of the show, Keith. And then he had some good games here against Houston and Chicago, which are nice matchups, and Giannis is out. That's kind of where you got to attack it. So if Giannis is going to be back, Portis is okay and usable, but otherwise I'd feel free cutting him. He's at 52%, so he's over the list. I've talked about him too long. Let's move on. Next on the list is Oshae Brissett. I talked about him in the video that I put out Friday night. I don't know why I'm pointing. I already linked to it on this video. It's a habit. So O'Shea's been playing really, really well, right? We're talking like getting a double-double with 2 or 3 3-pointers, surprising amount of blocks. This is awesome. He's rostered in exactly 50%. So he's right at the cutoff. And I've already talked about him, so I don't want to hammer it too much. But the big thing here is if I bring up the minutes, Indiana went on the road and just crushed the tanking OKC for 57 points. That is crazy. It was an NBA record for biggest win by a road team ever, as far as I know. And I wanted to bring up the minutes rotation to show you. Oshae Brissett still played 40 minutes in a blowout game. 40 minutes! He has a 4-game week. At least 2 of them are on a streamable day. Great for weekly lock leagues. You can probably get him in. So if he's still out there, go ahead and grab him. Over the last 2 weeks in an 8-category league, I just went by averages. He's the 44th overall player. And he played 40 minutes. Like, that's awesome. That's how you stack it up. Minutes is the most important thing here. That's why we're breaking down the games, trying to get you people. Go make sure Brissett's not out there in your league. Other familiar faces we talked about in last week's video. Khem Birch. I wrote down my notes 43% roster, but it's showing 49 live as I do this. He's been playing well. I recommended him last week. If you grabbed him for the 5-game week, great, because even though they only have 3-game weeks, so weekly lock leagues, not super interested. I would look for a different option. But for streaming, this is great. They play all of their games on low volume days, and he's playing well. Going backwards the last 3 games, he had 17, 10, and 6. For the 28 and 4, he had 13, 14, and 1. That's awesome for a guy you just scooped up. I don't even remember what his roster level was last week, but it was pretty low. You're able to get him in there. If you have him in a daily change league, I'm still riding with it. I think it's a great move. Next up on the feels like no original ideas plan, I swear I'm going to get to other names, but Jeff Green, 38% rostered. Brooklyn's streaming schedule is great. Milwaukee, Dallas, Denver on all the right days. Like, those teams aren't making you go, oh boy, Milwaukee, Dallas, Denver, but that's fine. You're not afraid of them. They've all got, Denver's a little bit slower of pace, but like, you're happy going against any of them. And Green's got 3s. He'll get you points. He'll get you rebounds. He'll get you good percentages. That's 5 categories right there. You can pick him up and play him. rostered in 38%. I think Jeff Green's worth a look and pairing with someone else for a streaming spot. Someone's new to the channel, Mohammed, shout out. Hey, welcome. Wrote and asked, like, why do we care about low volume days? Like, what's the idea of streaming here? And I wrote a whole long example and happened to use Jeff Green in the example for it. But I think he's a really strong pickup in your streaming spot, and you can work him in with some other guys. While I'm on this kick of repeating names, let's just talk about OKC, get him out of the way so I can get into some other interesting guys we don't always talk about, right? OKC's got a really good schedule. They play Sacramento, Golden State twice, and Sacramento again. You love that matchup. Only two teams. They're two teams that we like to attack. They end the week with the back-to-back, as you can see on the grid. So maybe you don't even pick up the guys now, although you can because they play on all the great streaming days. But you might just want to like make a note and look for the end of the week. I can't recommend Bazley because he's 59% rostered. If he's out there, if you're in that 40% of leagues, go grab Bazley for sure. But otherwise, Moses Brown, I was saying he was a cut a couple weeks ago. I made that cut. I think he's worth a look at 36% rostered, depending on what you need for it. He's playing a little better. Isaih Roby, 27%. Theo Maledon, 20%. Poku's out right now, 18% rostered, maybe by the end of the week. If he's back, you can play him in the back-to-back, although he might end up resting one of them because they're doing crazy stuff with the schedule. So I just wanted to like throw out those names, and I just wanted to move on. Like, they've got a great schedule. Picking up some guys, getting the counting stats on all those playable days is totally worth it. Let's talk about some new names. So some advice for all streaming leagues, right? Golden State's got a good schedule. They start off playing the Pelicans twice on a back-to-back, so you can come out of the block strong. And then they get OKC twice later in the week. Good streaming days, right? Same thing, because it's the inverse of OKC, who we just talked about. At 9% roster, there's Khem, Bazemore, and Jordan Poole. I think I'm more interested in Khem Bazemore than Jordan Poole. He's just getting you some all-around stats. Let's look at the last couple of games. He had 6 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, but 2 steals and a block. Then he had 10-10, 2 assists, 3 steals and a block. Both games he had 2 3-pointers. The field goal percentage isn't great. He's not being super efficient. We're talking like 30% from the floor. So be aware of that, right? But he's only 9% rostered. You can pick him up and play him up both those games against the Pelicans and then maybe just move on. But Bazemore is one of the guys I think is a real sneaky ad, and he's available in 91% of leagues. And he's the first like name that I don't think we've talked about in other weeks because it's fitting right now. Well, we're talking about fitting right now. Let's look at Willy Hernangómez or Guillermo Hernangómez, depending on how you're looking at it. He's rostered in only 6% of leagues, so 94% of you can pick him up. What happened is Steven Adams is out right now. He's listed as game time decision, so he might be back soon. But New Orleans has a strong schedule because they start off with that back-to-back against Golden State. You'd like that. If you can pick him up, look, in the last game he got 12 and 12, 57% from the floor. 13 and 10 with 2 steals and a block, 62% from the floor. That's against OKC and Minnesota. It's the same kind of tier, same level of team as Golden State. And if you can pick them up and play the back-to-backs against Golden State, get 2 uses out of them, and then you can just cut them. You move on. You don't have to hang on to them at all, and you can jump to someone else for those spots. So I would give Hernangómez a look to start your week if you can add him right now. I've got a couple quick names for you. Put on the watch list for maybe picking up this week, but really more for next week. Keldon Johnson didn't make this because San Antonio doesn't have a great schedule, but he's probably worth adding. He's rostered in 44% of leagues, and if he has an uptick, he might be above this line. I won't get to talk to him about him next week. So 44% roster, I think he's playable, but he doesn't mesh as well with your schedule and streaming right now. You'd have to be playing him all week in a weekly lock league for me to really recommend him, but he's got 5 games next week. So maybe worth the ad if you've got the extra spot and you're not streaming or weekly locks league and you just go for it. Along the same lines, Lonnie Walker, if you're looking for points and threes and pretty good percentage, he's only rostered in 14% of leagues. You don't have to scoop him up now, I don't think, but with the 5 games next week, make a note. Throw a little post-it note on the mirror, be like, on Thursday, like, I should check for Lonnie Walker and just see how my team's looking, right? Because they've got Sacramento and Portland on Friday and Saturday to end the week. If you can get him in there, you like those matchups, and then you've got him locked up for the 5-game week next week. So Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker, and then I don't know how this is going to go, so it's just watch list. Also, Milwaukee doesn't have a great schedule, but Bryn Forbes has had a couple weird, interesting games. Using the averages wouldn't even be fair, right? So last game, he had 10 points, 13 rebounds, which is great, with 2 threes. Like, that catches your attention a little bit for a guy who's rostered in 4% of leagues. And the game before that, he had 6 threes for 30 points and a steal. No rebounds, no assists, nothing. But he shot 64% from the floor and got a career-high 30 points. I don't know what to make of that. He did them both in less than 30 minutes in the game, but he's available in 96% of leagues. Milwaukee doesn't have the best schedule, right? If you picked him up and got him against Brooklyn, Washington, I don't know if you can work him in Washington, but you like the matchups there. Honestly, even the Houston, you like the matchups overall, but it's only a 3-game week. But the Bucks have a 5-game week next week. So it depends on your setup. I mentioned, like, do it, get out of it, cut your Bucks at the end of the week and get someone in there because they don't play at all on the weekend. So don't cut your Bucks at the start. But if you're streaming, that's a great spot to make a cut, especially in the championship. But that's also where I was cautioning 5-game week. Keep an eye on Bryn Forbes. Like, seriously, make a little note to just check those Bucks box scores, or I'll keep an eye on it and try and tweet it out as a reminder. Like, there might be something to jump on here, but it also might be a flash in the pan, so it didn't make one of my top recommendations for the week. That'll do it for this week. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you're still here, please give me a like, comment, ask questions down below. I'll be on top of it. Thanks for being here and supporting the channel. It's been awesome. Good luck in your matchup, and whether it's on the fantasy basketball court or just in real life, go out and win your week. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below. It helps me grow the channel. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe or even the little bell will give you alerts, and I'll be back soon with another video for you.